of the Jewish people, the making of what they call the golden calf, which in the beginning we're told that it's really a mask of a calf, because we know that all the ancient religions, all the worshippers of all the stars and all the animals and all the forces of nature, they all had masks. And usually the masks were used to impersonate forces of nature and scare people into paying their their dues to the priests. And that's just the way it's worked for thousands of years. And Abraham came onto the scene and said, this is not right. A god of the river, there's angels over rivers, there's angels over trees, but they're not gods. There's a difference because they're not independent forces. And so these masks were used to frighten people and to create these metaphysical dramas that used to play out in their own theologies. And this is in Africa, South America, East Asia, everywhere. Okay, these traditions exist. We come to the Western world, of course, we're more sophisticated. We're more educated. We're not going to buy the mask trip, right? So we put the mask on a man, or more than one man, or onto a political party, or to a revolutionary figure. But the mask is always the same, to hide the presence of the one true power in this universe. Now we see here in the Parsha, God is not acting like you would think an eternal, all-powerful being acts. Because Moses has come down from the mountain, they've heard the noise, they're partying in the camp, 3,000 of them, and there's 3.2 million, as the rabbis estimate for us. That's 0.1% of the people were engaged in this festival of eating and drinking and dancing and going around with the golden calf and masks and whatever was used for the party. And they heard the noise, and he broke the tablets, and he came down, and everybody's all upset, and Moses is rebuking them, etc. And so I'm going to pick it up in the middle of chapter 32 in Tisa of the Chumash, and he says, they have made themselves a molten calf, prostrated themselves to it, and sacrificed to it. And they said, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. Right, like the people believe that they just made something. No, you see, there was some metaphysical pyrotechnics going on. And we know that the calf, Aaron, Moses' brother, reported that I just threw the gold in the fire and the calf jumped back out. And the Kabbalah says it's because they had a name of God on a piece of parchment that said Ale Shor, that the ox, which represents Joseph, the great tzaddik who was buried in Egypt, that was brought up with the people, that this piece of holy cloth, which is sheepskin or lambskin, was put into the fire with it, and it caused this transformation of the gold into a figure. Okay, so it wasn't like they sat there and hammered the thing out and made a nice little, arts and crafts project. Okay, it was really the intentionality of the people was reflected in the magic that they created. This is what's happening. When we do something in our mind or think something in our mind, it suddenly happens in our life. How does that happen? Because the mind has the power to make something spiritual physical. And that's why we got to be careful with this kind of stuff. That's why we don't play with magic. We don't play with, witchcraft, etc. And so, but listen to how it goes on. And God said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is stiff-necked people. You've heard that before. Yeah, we all got this neck. That's why we need a lot of chiropractors in the Jewish people. And now desist from me, he tells him, Yinachenli, leave me alone. God says, why? Why does God have to tell Moses, a human being, to leave me alone? Unless Moses has enough power over God to influence God, that he has to tell Moses, leave me alone. And he says, let my anger flare up against them. Now God pins his own anger on Moses, letting him be angry. What is that? Is that the all-powerful infinite being? I need this human being to let me be angry at the people? I'm angry, but I'm holding it in because Moses is standing there in front of me. Moses is like the soldier in the brink, and the whole army is coming down on him, but it's just one infinite being. But it's the being. And God asks Moses to let him be angry. Why? And I shall annihilate them. God's saying, I'm angry, I'm going to annihilate them. You've caught him at the bad moment, he's going to annihilate. And I shall make you a great nation. And immediately God does something even stranger. He moves to negotiation. Don't worry, Moses, don't worry. I'm going to destroy the people, but I'll make you the next Abraham. And we'll make you a new start to the Jewish people. And we'll start the book here. And not with the Bereshit story and, of Adam and Eve and all that. We can filter that back in later. I'll write a new book from you. But God needs Moses to agree. Why? What's going on? Why is God standing down? And Moses, it says, pleaded before Hashem, and he said, why, Hashem, should your anger flare up against your people whom you have taken out of the land of Egypt? Moses knows why he's angry, but he asks, why should it? Why should it? You know these people. You know the story from before the story was told, before it was played out. With great power and a strong hand, you brought them out. Why should Egypt say afterwards, with evil intent did he take them out? Because the Egyptians are going to make it a big public relations campaign against God. They're going to say, oh, see, God's not so powerful. He took his people out with bad intent to kill them in the mountains and the desert. To wipe them off the face of the earth, the Pasuk says. Relent from your flaring anger. Hold back, God. Keep your anger down. You can do it, God. Breathe deep. Close your eyes. Remember what we learned. I'm laughing, but it's not such a laughing matter because we'll learn more as we go and we jump into the Zohar. Reconsider regarding the evil against your people. Reconsider, God. Think about this a minute. Your reputation is at stake here. You promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they're going to become as numerous as the stars of the heaven and the sand on the sea. And everybody knows the promises. You're going to get the land, and they're going to give the land to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the whole story. And you're going to do away with the whole story now because they made a little idol and had a party? And ruin your reputation as the infinite merciful being? Is that what you want to do after all your work? Is that what a husband wants to do after he's spent 30 years married and raised his children and grandchildren are here and then suddenly he wants to destroy the family and the marriage? I see it every day. That's my job, to not let it happen. It's a job. No, it's more than a job, believe me. It's a passion because the Talmud teaches us that what does the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, the cosmic prosecutor do at the end of days? He goes around making divorces. All he wants to do is get in between a husband and wife because when he does that, he destroys all the rest. And the children get traumatized and everybody's never the same. So there's the war right there. Okay. But nonetheless, Moses goes on and says what I just said, and do you have swore to yourself? You told them I shall increase your offspring. God, you swore. You cannot go against your own word. Now, of course, he can, but it just doesn't look good. It's not good PR. It's not going to work well with all the nations for thousands of years. They're going to remember those Jews? They had this great story going, and all of a sudden God wiped them out. What kind of story is that? Is that what you want on the record? Is that what you want published? Obviously not. But we know the Zohar goes along to teach us that the sin was a great sin, but only 3,000 people actually died because of this sin. And how it happened is that Moses took the golden calf, he burnt it in fire, he ground it into dust, he poured it into water, and he made people drink. And the ones who turned green, he knew that they were the ones that had actually worshipped. Because God, listen to what God says afterwards. He says, Hashem reconsidered regarding the evil that he declared he would do to his people. He reconsidered. And then he says, and I will only punish those who actually committed the act and not the people that didn't fight back. See, this is the real culpability that we have to deal with as human beings. We are not individual units operating in our own world. We are a collective. And when people do things in the collective, it affects everybody. And that's part of the spiritual unity of the people. That's part of the idea of the divine presence dwelling with the Jewish people. Because we take the responsibility seriously. And even if you're sitting in your recliner and everything looks pretty good, if somebody else is doing something that's really not good, it will affect the neighborhood, the school, the community, the city, the nation, etc. And I've been reading the history of the development of German warfare between World War I and II. And there were Jewish scientists involved in the things that were going on. And you wonder, how does anybody possibly calculate the Holocaust when you see that there were German and Jewish scientists behind a lot of the things that happened long before, the tanks rolled into Poland. But the point is, we can't judge. And we see in the Zohar says, God looks at Moses, he tells us in Parshat Tisa, and he says, Mipnei sha'af al pish Yisrael hotim, even though the Jews are going to sin. And he showed Moses every generation, and he showed them the sinners in every generation. Now, the sinners meaning the big guys, the leaders that have the power to sway, to have the real influencers, not YouTube or TikTok influencers, okay? The real influencers that you don't even know they exist. He showed them to Moses, and he said, they're all going to sin, but it's okay. I'm going to take care of them. All I want from you is not to remind me. I don't want to hear the rechilut, it's called, which is basically evil speech, which is tattletaling. I don't like when my kids tattletale on each other. Does any parent? No, it's not pleasant. Oh, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. No, that's what God doesn't want. Because he can take care of it, and we know that he already knows. So he doesn't need me to tell him. And that's what God tells Moses. Don't tell me about it. I'll show you everything, but don't tell me. Because I know I'm in charge. And I'm going to relent. I'm going to back down. I'm not going to kill the people. I'm going to spread the sin over 3,400 years as we count. That what God did is he mitigated the negative energy. And he spread it over all the exiles and over all the sufferings and over all the tragedies that we've seen and been through. It's been spread out over thousands of years so that people could live, people could recognize the Creator, that they could do mitzvot, that they could pray, that they could change the world based on the good that we do down here. Because clearly what we see in this story is that Moses himself had the power to back God off. Say, hold on, Hashem. We cannot do this. You cannot do this. It's not kedai for you to do it. Maybe he doesn't say quite like I'm saying it right now. But, things have changed. Yud K Vav K is becoming Yud K Yud K. In the end of days, we're told that God will look to us like partners, not like his children anymore. We're not going to be the children of the company. We're going to be partners. And that partnership is what we're building now. Through our communication, through our learning, through our prayer, especially the prayer of going off alone and talking to God in your own words. What Rabbi Nachman calls hitbodedut, the Mekubalim call isolated speech, and there's isolated meditation in that. And we do that every Thursday night on Web Yeshiva and elsewhere. You can check me out at Insight Time or whatever. I'm too tired to be pumping the horn right now. But because the important thing is to remember, you have the power. You're part of that power. You're part of the power of Moses, because a spark of Moses, because he was the original Messiah form, the original paradigm of the Messianic soul, everybody has a spark of him. That means everybody has the power to stand up and argue for the sake of the Jews, for the sake of his God's name, for the sake of Eretz Yisrael, for the sake of the truth, even though the world is just pumping out lies as fast as they can invent them about the religious, about the settlers, about Jewish people everywhere. Because the other side has foresight. See, what we don't understand, the evil side has a sort of Ruach HaKodesh. It sees the future. It sees its own demise. Evil knows its end is coming. And so it's putting on a show as hard as ever put all around the world. The redemption now is global, folks. Just like it was centered in the Middle East then, now it's global. Because there are Jews everywhere global. And the divine presence is everywhere global, showing itself, waiting to reveal. And the Zohar here calls the divine presence the mother who's separated from her husband to be with her child. The Zohar gives us a whole long story. We're not going to learn it tonight, maybe another time. But in short, the king has a favorite son. The son sins. The king kicks the son out of the house. He comes back. He says, "I'm sorry, Dad." King lets him back in the palace. After a while, he feels good again. He goes out and he starts sinning again. And in the meantime, the mother says, "No, leave him alone. I vouch for him. I stand up for him. He'll be good this time." And he's not. And now the king does what? Well, you said he would be good for him. I kick both of you out of the palace. This is all the Torah in this week's Parshat of the Zohar, right? And now the queen and her son are outside the palace in exile, and that's the Jewish people with the divine presence. And so now God's waiting for not only his son, his children, the Jewish people to come home. He's waiting for the queen, his wife, his beloved, the divine presence, the immanent presence, not the transcendental one. The one that you feel in your heart when you're inspired, when you love God, when all you want is the truth. And that's what we're here for. So come around. We'll be on all the outlets as time and energy permits. But we have a daily class from every night. We deal with this, and we're going to be with the Zohar as much as we can, especially on Friday afternoon. And tonight, Saturday night Zohar, is a chance to take a look at what's really going on and why the Bible was written so obtusely, right, that it would make us ask the questions and do the work and make the journey into the text, into the words, into our own souls, and into the soul of the universe. And that is the journey. I bless you all to be on it and get deeper and stronger, more powerful, because big things are coming. God bless you all. Have a great week. All the best.